Well, there's a big decision that is confronting this country when it comes to our roads. It is privatizing the roads, the toll regime. We want to break it down, do some analysis of it, what we've learned from other parts of the continent where this initiative and this approach to building roads is already being done, and ask the question, what can we learn from those other countries as we set off on this journey to do what the finance minister announced yesterday that we are going to start doing now, where we're going to get a private sector to get into building roads and they have to make their monies back. There are advantages and disadvantages. Other African countries have tried it. We're going to look into what they've done, what the criticisms have been, what lessons are there for us. So a very thorough discussion tonight. Let's start with some of the work we've done ourselves here to try and learn a bit more about what this could mean for us. One of the first things that we want to start with is the finance minister's own 2022 budget announcement, which is a very fascinating one indeed. We've had tolling on our roads for decades. He then goes to Parliament and does his announcement that tolls have been zero rated. Well, we use the word abolished, but technically hasn't been, because the law that, gives birth and empowers the state to charge and levy the tolls is still in place, right? I mean, so what it is that it hasn't really been abolished. And this, by the way, is 2021, not 2022. That's when he went to Parliament and made an announcement. And I was explaining that because the law still exists, any government in the future can go back and reintroduce the tolls. It is, I believe, under the same circumstance that he now comes back to the mid-year budget review. This is the 2022, just yesterday, on Monday, when he went to Parliament and makes the announcement that all roads of this nature will be tolled. What roads is he talking about? Roads under the gift-led public-private partnership will be tolled. He can say that because the law still exists. And so if the law exists, they can impose that levy still. They didn't abolish tolls. They simply zero-rated it, which they have the power to do if they go to Parliament and get parliamentary approval. So that is the announcement yesterday, as we saw. And they make the example, to be more specific, of the Accra-Tema motorway. And that's a very interesting example that he cited, possibly one of the busiest roads you can find in Ghana. What we're going to do tonight is to quantify for us how many roads, how many cars use the motorway in a day, and then you begin to appreciate why that road would be pretty attractive to the private sector investor. Okay, so we talk about GIF here. That's a vehicle that the finance minister announced yesterday government was going to use for this. What is it? They've done a very good job. The Ghana Investment Infrastructure Fund is a permanent investment vehicle established by the government of Ghana with 325 million anchor equity to act as a catalyst. And the government created this vehicle to leverage the private sector funds into infrastructure assets. It's very, very expensive. One of the most expensive things any government can do is to invest in infrastructure. And so they created this to try and get the private sector involved in building. But private sector will jump at anything that has good returns. And so if you look at the works that they've done in the past, it has a very good record. And this is the Terminal 3 at the Kotoka International Airport. And if you ask anybody, this 30 million investment is paying back, right? It's paying back. So it's not one of those social investment that you pump money in that doesn't necessarily directly pay for itself. The Kotoka International Airport is paying back that debt. And the private sector like that sort of arrangement. That's not the only thing they've done. They've done the new multi-product oil jetty capable of receiving vessels of up to 50,000 DWT, which is important. Again, you have the 58 million new container handling terminal, multi-purpose terminal within the existing Takoradi port. And that is another important investment that will be generating revenue for whichever private sector decides to pump money into to partner government to do this. And you have the turbo power, 30 million, investment. That's the first phase of the 31 megawatts e-power plant to be located at the turbo. It converts flared gas into electricity. Again, this will be very lucrative. And so the private sector will love to put in, and that's why. So that's their portfolio, things that they put their money in. The point I want to make with this is that the GIF is a good vehicle. They have a track record of making investments such as this, and so they can partner the private sector to construct the Tema motorway. So that's a very important thing just to establish that yes, it's a vehicle that is there, it's been established, and it's already, has the wherewithal to do this. So one of the things we want to do, as I said at the beginning, is this approach is not new. Others on the continent have done it. Elsewhere, it's pretty commonplace, where government is no longer in the business of building roads themselves with the taxpayers' funds directly. They simply get the private sector to do it because you can tow it and then you can make money over time, right? And it makes sense why Ghana will be thinking that this is the best way to go now, because roads are a major part of an economy, and it forms one of the key things that voters will look at when they are going to the polls. You think a voter will care who builds the road? Government will take credit for it. If the private sector built it, government will take credit for it. So why should government go and take all these very expensive loans at a time when we don't have access to the markets and build the road when they can get the private sector to simply do it? The problem, though, is the private sector guy will want his money back. How? Let's go to Kenya. Kenya has a very fascinating, road that was built by the Chinese, and it's called the Nairobi Expressway. Anybody who's been to Kenya and those who live there will tell you it is a very controversial thing that the government of Uhuru Kenyatta decided to do, but they've done it and it's working. It's not without its critics, right? So what did they do? They got a China Road and Bridge Corporation to fund this, and huge amounts of money, $550 million. That's more than $500 million. That's a lot of money. And if you've been to Kenya, Nairobi, you probably understand what I mean. This connects the Nairobi airport all the way into town. I mean, it stretches 27.1 kilometers. That's quite a stretch there. And it cost this much. So that's a lot of money they built. But the thing about this is they didn't just build the expressway. I'll show you a picture, a very fascinating picture. They built the expressway above, and then beside it and underneath it is ordinary lanes that are not towed, right? They had to make their money back. So how are they making their monies back? They were making their monies back through tolls. And this is what they were charging, between 8 equivalent, okay, of course it's in shillings in Kenya, but they're charging equivalent of 8 CD 24 pesos to access it, between that and 123 cedis. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. Consider that we were paying tolls. When they abolished the tolls, it was 1 cedi. My car was paying 1 cedi. If you had a saloon car, you're paying 50 pesos. So think about it. In Kenya, they were paying this. And those who live there say, if on average now, you pay $1.50 now on average. So this is slightly on this side of it. $1.50. That is around 12 cedis. So assuming that we get the Tema motorway built, and you're using current economics and the rates of interest rates and the depreciation of the cedi, etc., even if paying 15 cedi thereabout, will you pay 15 cedis in, 15 cedis out on a Tema motorway that comes down to 30 cedis just to, in and out using the Tema motorway? Are you prepared to pay that if the road is in absolute pristine condition? What the Tema motorway extension will do is to have multi-lanes, both on the left and right, clear median, so the accidents will be reduced, but fantastic lane. You can drive and speed as all you want, and it is sweet. Will you spend that equivalent, this amount that Kenyans are paying, and then you have the purpose. It's depending, and you are paying, there's a range, you're paying this depending on the vehicle type and distance, cutting down traffic from 3 hours, to 20 minutes. That's a lot of time saved. And I saw somebody do analysis of this Kenya-Nairobi expressway with analysis of if you have 3 hours, right? But if it can come to 20 minutes, consider the fuel. I'm talking about the amount you're paying. And many will say, but this is too expensive, right? This is too expensive. Ghanaians will not want to pay this amount because it's simply too expensive. This year, it's too expensive. Assuming it's even the, what the Kenyans pay now, which is around $1.50, just 12 cedis thereabout, and then you pay the same out, almost 30 cedis. Too expensive. But if you consider that your fuel cost is going to be, factored into this in the current time when fuel is very expensive, right? That will save you a lot if you think about it. Say you work in Tema and motorways, you pay a lot, by the way. You have to do your own calculations. So that's just one of the things you're doing for you, trying to help you appreciate what this will mean once it's finally delivered. Because that's what is happening in Kenya, by the way. So this is positive. The environmental impact is good because you're losing less time. The stress on yourself, you're cutting down the maintenance, is your vehicle maintenance. In the long term, you possibly will gain, right? So that is Kenya. That is the expressway there that I wanted to show you, in Kenya. That's the expressway there in Kenya. Now, one of the things that I want you to notice about this, right? I want you to notice about this is look here, look underneath here, right? This is the expressway, and the road above is the one that is tolled, right? And then they have this for, if you don't want to pay for the expressway, which is quite costly for the average, Kenyan, you can choose to use this. That's where the traffic is. So they created an incentive to use the expressway. And they build both. They build what is here, they probably improved the normal roads and then build this afresh. So you can choose to use the traffic prone one. You pay nothing, but you sit in traffic for hours, right? You pay more fuel, you maintain your vehicle, you are late, productivity is going to be affected, or you choose to pay your $1.50, a lot of money, to use the expressway. And it's cut down traffic from 3 hours to 20 minutes. You want to sit there for 3 hours? So that is what they've done. But there was criticism in Kenya because the view in Kenya was that what they had done in essence is to create one road for the rich, one road for the rich, and one road for the poor. And so it became very controversial. And they said, well, look at the expressway. One car on top of it. You have thousands of cars crammed here. Why are you creating a class system when it comes to the roads? I wonder what our approach is going to be. Are we going to have one that is tolled and one that is not, so people have a choice? So, that is a very interesting concept that Kenyans deploy. But that is what happens in Kenya. You either use here, pay nothing, stay in traffic, or use the expressway. That's a very interesting concept. I guess this is all part of the conversation towards implementing. So that's a Kenyan example. And then we also went to Senegal, where they have a very interesting one too. Not like the Kenyans. They decided to go to a private investor, and the private investor invested $173 million to build the 17-kilometer. By the way, the Accra-Tema motorway, according to the highways, the Ministry of Roads and Highways, is 19.5 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. So this is shorter than that. And it cost us $173 million. It cost the Senegalese $173 million. But here's another thing that we need to pay attention to. The private sector guy who's putting the money in will have to make their money back over a period. In Senegal, it was 25 years. So they will toll the road for 25 years in Senegal, make all their monies back before the road returns back to the state. During that period, they will charge the toll, as I've explained in the case of Kenya, a lot of money to make their monies back, right? But here, benefit, cutting down traffic time 2 hours to less than 30 minutes. Just imagine Accra Kumasi, 255, 300 kilometer stretch. We do it 5 hours, 4 hours. I mean, if you're even doing 100 kilometers an hour, that should, take you 2 hours, 50 minutes to do. But it takes us 4 hours to do. Why? The road is terrible. And you drive, you have to be careful, the accidents, all those things. If somebody builds that and says, I'm going to charge you 30 cedis to use it, 30 cedis back, 60 cedis, would you pay? You are going to avoid accidents. Your life is safe. Fuel, done. Road is sweet. It's all 2 lanes or 3 lanes on each side. Will you pay for that? And he says, I'm going to do this. You're going to pay this for 25 years. Think about that. Now, the World Bank did a study on this approach. And they came up with the costs and the benefits. They came up with the advantage and the disadvantage. One of the key advantages they found is zero cost to the government. Zero cost to the government. Government doesn't pay anything. We go in and pay. I don't know what our approach is. I hear the finance minister say possibly our approach will include government bearing part of the cost, because a public-private partnership. I don't know what that approach is going to be exactly, but one of the key advantages is that government pays zero. This is according to the World Bank. But here is the challenge. The private sector guy is going to be doing this based on the traffic volumes. And the World Bank is warning that the high capital construction costs mean that the projections of traffic volumes often considered an insufficient revenue stream to meet debt service and equity return for sponsors. So they possibly are looking at it, do you have enough traffic volumes? And often it takes longer, 25 years in the case of Senegal, to make the money back. Is it too long for the investor? And that's one of the things they are letting us to. Government has fiscal space to fund other projects. Of course, if government is not putting all this money into building roads and there are other monies available to do free SHS and other things. So that's a benefit. The negative is very long concession period. In Senegal's case, it is 25 years. We have to wait 25. The private guy will tax and toll it, and they can increase the toll, of course, because it's private. If the inflation is coming in, exchange rate is coming in, they'll say, well, we need to increase it to cover the cost over time. And they'll have, it depends on the kind of agreement we sign. And that's one of the sticky points too. This is not straightforward. In every place they've done this, there's always controversy. Are we going to do 10 years, 15, 20, or in the case of Senegal, 25 years? Think about that. That's a long time indeed. What World Bank says, it is one of the disadvantages, very long concession periods indeed. Reluctance by investors to become involved. Costs will be higher to reflect higher risks. Of course, the risk there, I'm going to make my money back, is too long. A lot of things, factors that you can immediately quantify, and so they'll put it in their cost. Potential consumer resistance to paying for road use. And that was the key problem that the Kenyans have with the expressway. There was a huge controversy over paying what I told you earlier, $1.50 or so, that range there, because people said it's too much. Why should we pay that much to use a road, right? So that's the main challenge you see. Then you start thinking about what the monies I've mentioned and what we learned from Kenya and elsewhere. That is the key challenge that government will face. Well, the private guy will insist, give me realistic tolls so I can build the road for you. What would government agree to? And will you agree to that when it comes down to it? So, a bit more of the background to this. Where are we coming from? Government has abolished tolls and we are losing money. We are doing this because we're in a tight corner. Government can no longer finance the roads, and so the private sector guys should do it. But whilst we say we don't have money, so private sector guys should come in, we are losing 72 million that we used to get from the 38 toll stations right now. Since we abolished the tolls, well, we zero rated the tolls. It's been 252 days. And that is since November 2021. And in that period, we have lost 49.3 million so far. Do you know how much this could do in repairing some of the roads, asphalting them, etc.? It could do some work for us, right? So that's how much we've lost so far. And as we know, there are people who say their employment has been affected. About 744 toll workers have lost their jobs. And by the way, let me tell you something about what happens in Senegal and Kenya. When they do these roads, they're not going to have human beings sitting there and collecting the tolls. Forget it. The private sector guy wouldn't do that. It's going to be mechanized and digitized. You buy your tag, you insert it, or they fix it to the screen of your vehicle, and when you're passing, the gauge reads it automatically, then the gates are open for you and you go. Nobody's sitting there to collect. You've already paid and it's immediately deducted. So no human interaction there. And so all these individuals who personally may think we may get our jobs back, it is not happening. They may have one lane where, you know, those who want to pay manual might go because people may not necessarily have bought into this. So you can have an option. And that there you have a long queue. So that will be a disincentive. So majority of people will go and get this. Accra Motorway is a very busy road, right? So as far as jobs concerned, it's not an advantage because it's automated. It's automated, so forget about it. Maybe GIF may employ people or the private company. In Kenya, they have a whole company that has been set up to run this. So maybe they may employ people, but not to run the toll booth. So this will change. We're not going to have about 281 persons with disabilities. Unfortunately, what the government plans to do, it will not employ people to collect tolls. So don't bang on that. So that is what we know so far. It is a big decision. Controversial one is proving in Kenya and in Senegal. But if you ask those who did it, and some of the Kenyans, they like it. They like the fact that you can cut the journey time to 20 minutes, something you spend 3 hours doing. If you can afford, use it. But can the Ghanaian afford it? Big question we are asking when my guests join me here on PM Express after this break. Stay with me. And thanks for staying with me on PM Express. My guest tonight, Stephen Pambim Jalula. He is the Deputy Roads and Highways Minister, MP for Pru. Also joining me is Engineer Abdullahi Mahama, a civil engineer, and Dr. Daniel Asenso Jambibi is the Director at Building and Roads Research Institute. Fantastic panel indeed to look at this big decision that government has taken. I want to start with you, Mr. Jalula. If you could give us some clarity on this. We know the finance minister said yesterday that this whole arrangement is at the procurement stage. Does that mean that we already know the identity of the private sector partner who will be partnering, the state, the GIIF, to build the road?
Thank you, Evans, for having me on your platform tonight. I'm the MP for Pru West.
Pru West, yes.
And not Pru. Yeah, I think yesterday the finance minister came to Parliament to present the mid-year budget review. And the process mentioned the strategy of the government to employ the arrangement of PPP. Mm-hmm. And in it, he says that the arrangement is being reviewed. But as at this time, we do not know the identity of the companies involved as at now. And I'm sure that after the arrangement has been reviewed to be made public. Okay.
There are some big decisions, learning from the examples of Kenya and Senegal. One of the biggest decisions, I guess, most controversial will be in the negotiations with the private guy once we get it, how long the concession period is going to be once it's built, how much toll will they prefer to charge, and the question also of what type of road are we going to see, the expansion project. The Kenya example is a very fascinating one where they have two options, the expressway where it's tolled and the common one which is traffic prone, which is not, so you have a choice. Are we close to figuring this out, all these factors out at this stage?
All right. I think that these are early days yet, but what I know is that the design is going to be in such a way that 2 lanes on either side of the road will be express road, and it will be concrete as well. Okay. Then there will be additional 3 lanes on either side, and that will be slip roads and access roads. And that means that my understanding is that the tolling is going to vary. If you are using the expressway, you may pay a little higher than when you are using the side roads. Yep. And also beyond that, I think that we all know the layout of Accra. And as we speak now, the government is busily developing the coastal road, the beach road, from the Independence Square towards Tema. And in case that completes before the motorway, those who may not be able to use the motorway can conveniently use the beach road to access Tema and Accra.
That road will not be towed, will it? The beach road will not be towed?
No, please. For now, the tolling will be done on the Tema motorway. And as the minister said, the finance minister said, going forward, whatever road the government will do on PPP arrangements will be tolled.
Okay. So that's an interesting one, because then people have an option if you can't afford the toll on the Accra-Tema motorway, then you have an option to avoid it. I mean, I wonder whether that will be attractive to the private investor who will be coming in.
Yeah, if you read a statement of the minister, if you listened to him, watched him, he indeed indicated that government is going to use the GIF, Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund. And then this fund, the GIF, will create a special purpose vehicle where GIF will even hold the majority shares in it, that we are going to use the proceeds to do the Tema motorway.
Okay.
So that's the arrangement that is being developed.
Okay. And just finally, before I bring my other guest experts in our arrangement, in the other places that we've just catalogued, the state has zero commitment of funds to it. The private sector does it. In our case, what is the arrangement? I mean, you say that we're going to have a majority stake. Does it mean that we're going to contribute majority of the funds, or the private sector will carry the entire financial burden of construction?
Yes. In our case, the government is going to have a stake in it. And as stated earlier, it will be the majority stakeholder in the SPV.
Okay. So does that mean necessarily that we're going to, in terms of, so if the thing costs 30 million, we are going to contribute more of that money, majority of that, for the construction?
Exactly so.
Okay, that's interesting. Stay with me. Let me bring in Dr. Daniel Asenso Jambibi. Doc, I mean, first of all, knowing what we know from the other places and what we just heard, what's your take, expert take, on this approach? Starting with the Tema motorway, now we know it's not going to be a uniform tolling system. You're going to have the express 2-lane, where you pay slightly more, and then you have the other slip roads where you pay slightly less.
My name again.
Yes. I mean, what do you say, Dr. Daniel?
Yes, thank you very much, Evans, and good evening to our listeners. It's a step in the right direction. And this is what we have been advocating for years on end. This is the way to go. PPP involvement in the road infrastructure is key, because government does not have the resources to do that. If 1.5 kilometers, 1 kilometer costs 1.5 million, just check Kumasi to Accra, 250 kilometers. How much are you going to spend? 375 million Ghana cedis. Do we have that money? The private sector has the money to do it. But let me, for the preliminary statement, let me state that, politicians are agents of change, whether for good or for bad. But it is incumbent on technocrats, experts, professional bodies, Ghana Institution of Engineering, Ghana Institution of Surveyors, civil society organizations, and the media like you, to inform the debate, as we are doing, as to the viability, the feasibility, and the alternative investment opportunities that are available. And for me, going the PPP way to build our road infrastructure is the best way. In fact, we have no other alternative. And you have said it all. I mean, all the points you made. Look at the Kenya example. Reducing traffic time from 3 hours to 20 minutes. Do we know the amount of fuel that we are going to save? If I am going to drive on that road and pay a toll of, say, 30 cedis and save 2 hours, 40 minutes and get to my destination, why wouldn't I do that? I move from Kumasi to Accra at least 3 times or 2 times in a month. And if I have to travel from Accra to Kumasi and spend 4.5 hours on the road, if I get a private person to build a very good road, good concrete road, that will take me 2.5 hours to go to Accra and spend 30 cedis. That's about $4 or something to Accra, I will do that because that road will be safe, that road will be economical, and it will save me time and convenience. So for me, this is the way to go. We have even spent too much. We have wasted too much time on it.
I mean,
that's the truth.
Engineer Mahama, you agree with that?
I would say a good evening to all your viewers, and to a larger extent, I agree with Doc. My only worry is that, like you rightly said in your intro, due to the amount of money involved in the construction, it will be a disincentive to private developers to bring in their money, especially when most of the roads are not populated. So if you look at the motorway, which is approximately 19 kilometers, which is heavily trafficked, it means that any PPP would work there. If we take the Malang Kaswa stretch of the road, let's say from Kaswa to Accra or to Kaneshie, if it is expanded to have an express road, you have a similar attraction. If you take from Achimota right down to, let's say, Pokwase, all the way to Amasaman, it will attract the same thing. But I'm not too sure that once government decides to go the PPP way, the government would not also engage the other roads. I am of the view that aside the private sector coming in with the toll, government should not stop the toll on its own on other roads because of the burden that government has in trying to maintain the roads, to pay other local contractors who are doing the pothole patching or to improve the riding quality of a lot of our roads in the country. So I understand. Let's say government decide to allocate the most traffic roads to the private individuals or companies to operate. What of, let's say, Ebri to Koforidua, which is not heavily trafficked? What of other roads which are not heavily trafficked? I think that the unpopular decision, I remember I heard Doctor saying, I think it was yesterday on one of the sister stations, that the decision to actually terminate the toll levy was unpopular. In fact, it doesn't make any sense to some of us, because I think across the globe, Ghana will be among maybe one or two countries which is not towing their roads now. And considering the amount of money involved, let me just make a correction. The roads, if you are doing a dual carriage now in Ghana, to and fro, and if you take, let's say, Ofankor, along the Ofankor road, and you're just taking 1 kilometer of a dual carriage to and back, so you're having a 4-lane, it's in the region of about 3.2, 3.4 million United States dollars, an asphaltic binder concrete cost. So that is quite expensive. And its maintenance is also very expensive. You know that on the books of government, there are a lot of the contractors who are doing spot improvements, weeding along the roadside, weeding around the carriageways, the medians, who have not been paid for years. So I'm of the view that let's capture those heavily trafficked roads, let government engage the PPP, but government should not stop the towing of the other roads so that we can expand faster. Otherwise, we'll put so much concentration on this motorway, express roads, and then we'll neglect the road because government cannot find money to even do maintenance. That is my initial submission.
And very quickly, let's drill down some of the mechanics now. The Accra to Mamoto, what's the volume of traffic there? Do we know?
It's about 93,000 vehicles per day.
Okay, so definitely that would be possibly one of the most traffic roads in the Greater Accra region. Across
the country, the most used, the most traffic road across the country.
Okay.
Followed by the Accra Kumasi, which was about 66 or 64,000 about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
I just did a small calculation, just for viewers to understand something. Let's say when we zone in the 93,000 vehicles, we know we have the PC, the passenger car unit vehicle, the saloon cars. We have the light cars, let's say the Benz, the Sprinter buses, the Urbans, and let's say we have the axle loads or the axle heavy duty trucks. And if we say about 50%, it's just an approximation for the benefit of viewers, about 50% of 93,000 vehicles, that's about 46,500, are supposed to go on the express road, and they are told or they are levied at 4 Ghana cedis. That's about 186,000 Ghana cedis per day. for any developer. I'm just breaking something down. And let's say the medium buses, the urbans are within the second bracket of about 30% of 93,000. That's about 223,200 Ghana cedis per day. And if you take the last one, which is the heavy duty trucks, the trailers and the like, which are come within the 20% bracket, that's about another 223,000 Ghana cedis per day. Now, if you sum up this up and you just want to divide it by even, let's say the dollar is about 8 cedis, you are dealing about 79,050 Ghana dollars per day. Now, if you multiply that by the whole year, without even adding the fluctuation here and there, you are getting about $250,250. And it means that if the road is supposed to be towed, you need about 17 years. I'm assuming that I don't know what the figure they gave earlier was about $500 million for that 19-kilometer stretch. Assuming that we are doing that with $500 million, we need about 17.3 years. 17.3 years to be able to recoup the money from the investor. Like you were saying, the Kenya one was about 25, Senegal was about 25, 23. This is about 70. Assume that the road, the 19 or 17 kilometer stretch is going to be $500 million. This is something we are going to look at in trying to entice developers or PPP to come in and then do the construction. So that's my first initial considerations or calculations for the motorway specific.
So overall,
we'll come to the Amasaman stretch, which is also becoming one of a headache in the country, especially with that small stretch of Fanko just to Pokwase to Sapeman. That is the only most traffic road. When you go past that area, that's about 4 kilometers from Ofanko to Sapeman. That's where we have the toll booth. The other road from there all the way to before you enter Kumasi is a free range area.
I mean, Dr. Asenso Jambibi, the Deputy Minister, quickly, I don't know what you say about that, but also just in addition to that, the Deputy Minister explained that Ghana's approach will be funding a majority part of the construction. We're not going to leave it all to the private sector. Elsewhere, the private sector did it themselves, and then they give them the concession for as long as they want and make their money back, hands over to the government. But our approach is different. What do you make of that approach?
Yes, I think we can approach it this way. As Engineer Abdullah said, can we leave the heavy traffic areas to the private sector? The old ones, as I said yesterday, I disagreed with government when it abolished the road tolls. Because you see, you need money to maintain the roads and expand them, even the ones that are not privately owned. So, whereas government, the tolls that we are going to pay, we don't expect that people will be paying $10 to be able to recoup the investment in a shorter period. So what government can do is that government can supplement the private sector so that it can shorten the period for which the private sector can recoup the investment. Other than that, give the road to the private sector, let them continue to run and maintain it, because immediately it reverts to government, then we are going to see deterioration, because government will not have the resources to do what? To make sure that the roads are maintained and expanded. So if the private sector is not interested in 25 years, then it behoves on government to supplement that so that the private sector will have less time to recoup its investment. But for the old roads that we are going to pay little, we still have to give some tolling so that we can recoup. For me, I see the toll as something like user fees. They are not, the fees you are paying, the tolls you are paying are not enough to build the infrastructure over the medium term. So it's like a user fee, and government will have to subsidize so that the private sector can recoup the investment fast. That can be the alternative approaches that we can adopt.
I mean, Mr. Jalula, what do you make of that suggestion that those busy roads, yes, toll them, I mean, get the private sector involved, and then put some tolls on the other roads as well, and that you need to find money to maintain the other roads, so you don't neglect the roads because you have the private sector investment and the other roads don't. Hello, Mr. Jalula. Please unmute for me if you...
Evans, I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you now, yes. Well, what do you make of the suggestion to consider, looking at dividing the roads, the busy ones, of course, let the private sector come in and take it, and then you toll the other roads as well, that because you want to maintain the roads, you need money to do that?
Yeah, I think largely the cessation of road tolls happened last year because of reasons that were given, the nuisance, pollution, and congestion. And I think all over the country, roads are tolled. And that is why we were tolling our roads until November 2021 when we ceased due to the new policy that the government adopted. But for now, the government's position is that the roads should not be tolled, bridges should not be tolled. Maybe over time, if the causes of these congestion, pollution, and other things are eliminated, the government may decide to reintroduce tolls on our roads, which is good. But for now, as we speak now, the government's position is that we shouldn't take tolls on public roads, and that it is only PPP roads that we should toll.
I mean, yes, the finance minister was clear yesterday that all other roads, such as the one that the Tema motorway, Accra motorway, will be tolled. Have we identified any other roads yet, apart from the Accra Tema motorway, to apply this strategy to?
Yes, I think within my short stay at the ministry, I have been part of meetings where private investors have submitted proposals to do many other roads like we want to do on the Tema Accra motorway. So yes, investors are always ready if they know that their investments will yield good results. And I'm pretty sure that if this one is able to go through, we will get many more PPP roads being done in the country.
Which roads are typically attractive? I mean, the proposal that have come, which roads are private sector looking at beyond the Accra Tema motorway?
Yeah, if you look at the country, the most trafficked roads are the Tema Accra motorway. We have Accra Kumasi motorway as well. And we have Accra Cape Coast Takoradi Road. These are very heavy trafficked roads in the country. And these are where most of the investors are looking at.
Okay, so the investors are already, looking to cash in. Government's approach is, what is the government approach when the proposals have come? You are reviewing them, or you say, well, Accra Kumasi is one of those very famous heavy traffic roads. Accra Cape Coast you also mentioned, Accra Takoradi you also mentioned. Is government reviewing this favorably, or what's the process once the proposals come?
Yes, government is reviewing every proposal that comes to us. And as I said, I'm sure that if this one is able to go through, we will see a lot more private investor involvement in our road construction.
Okay, let's look at time frame though. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the finance minister said that construction of the road may begin in September. Correct me if I'm wrong. What is the time frame?
Yeah, we are looking at September time for the works to start, barring any last-minute hitches. And they should, if it starts in September, it should be done by the middle of 2024. Yeah, and not the whole project though. The express roads should be done by the middle of 2024. That's what we are looking at.
Okay. I mean, September, in July now, August, that's just a little over a month, just close to 2 months away. That's really around the corner. Are we sure we can meet that start date?
Let's wait and see, but we are pretty sure that it's possible. It's a workable date that we have selected.
Okay, let me bring in the Engineer Mahama. Engineer Mahama, considering the work that have to go into this, as Mr. Jalula said at the beginning, the identity of the selection of the private partner not yet firmed up. So you have to do that. And then you have to go into the contract arrangement. You have to determine ahead of time the concession period. And then you have to determine, I guess one of the most controversial things that Ghanaians will want to know is, how much will the tolls be when they are ready? All that need to go into the contract terms, Considering all the complications, since we are doing this for the first time, is the time frame realistic? September beginning date, is it realistic? Engineer Mama.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you. I think the line, there was a break in the...
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I'm just asking, on the back of Mr. Jalula's, giving us a time frame that the construction of the Tema Motorway PPP project should begin in September. I'm just wondering, is that a realistic time frame? Considering the complication of this arrangement, you need to first identify your partner, and we are not there yet because he confirmed that at the beginning. We haven't selected a private partner yet. You have to determine how much the private sector guy is going to charge the toll. You have to determine the concession period. Ghanaians will have to buy into it. It has to probably go to Parliament. Is that a realistic time frame?
I think the deputy stated that a lot of work had been done prior to the announcement yesterday. The other thing I think is that when they actually commence the project itself, a 19-kilometer stretch wouldn't be much of a problem. I am just concerned about, even if all things being equal and the construction starts, the management of the traffic. So now, if we should start in September, and the beach road, like it's alluded to, had not been completed, where we were able to divert a lot of traffic, volume of traffic onto that road. You just remember about a month ago when we had the collapse or the suspected collapse of the slab on the motorway, and we had to do even diversion on the same motorway. You actually were witness to the uproar that we had in the country. So I think the ministry would have to give us a lot of further information as to when and how this will be. Because mind you, I think last year it was part of the budget that plans were far advanced to get the contractor or financiers to come in. It had repeated itself twice last year and then this year's budget before this media review. We just hope that this time around they'll be definite with their commencement dates, as in using these 2 months or so to be able to award the contract, get the prospective clients, the partnership, get everything done, go to Parliament, and then get the work started. I think, there are two things here. Maybe the Deputy Minister will clarify some few things for us. The motorway is here to start. Just last week, Wednesday, the Ofankor and Sawam, which is about 15 kilometers, it's about 17 kilometers. When you exclude the Pokwas interchange, you have about 15 kilometers that has started. And per what I've seen, there is a toll. The approval of the loan last week in Parliament, I'm told that was one of the cost components. I mean, the budget included the Ofankor to Nsawam project. And I've seen that there's going to be an expansion of the toll. Is that also a PPP? Because that is government money that has been loan that has been approved by Parliament for the commencement of that job, which has started in earnest anyway. So we want to know this one as whether those roads are also classified under the PPP, because that is a loan from government. Okay. So let's see how government can come up with the information on the
okay. Which road again do you mention? Ofankor?
I mentioned the Ofankor to Nsawam stretch.
Okay.
The Nsawam bypass had been done, which is about 9.7 kilometers, and the Nsawam, that's a Kwafukum to Apidja, is almost at the completion, which is another 31.3 kilometers done. But between Ofankor to Nsawam is a 17.234 kilometers. If you exclude the Pokwas interchange, which has some expansion from the Jonte and then Festus, that's about a 2-kilometer stretch, which has been expanded from the 17. So we have about 15-kilometer stretch, which has started as of last week, Wednesday. And I've seen, per the document I've seen so far, I've started so far, there's an expansion of the existing toll at the Saperman.
Okay.
So we will need some further clarity whether
that road is going to be tolled.
And that, no, once there's an expansion of a toll, the existing toll booth, it means that it will be considered as a towing area. But is it under any PPP? Because that's part of the loan that was.
Let's get the Deputy Minister to answer that. Mr. Jalula, do you have an answer for that? Is that under PPP And is there a confirmation that we are going to be seeing tolls on that stretch soon?
Okay, Ben. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Very well. The Ofankor to Nsawam stretch that was published last week is a GOG project being pursued by the state. So it is not a PPP project.
Okay. He's also talked about there's an expansion of the toll joints. Does that mean we're going to see a tolling on that?
Ben, if you look at the Fees and Charges Act, it has not been revised. It is a policy of the state that the government that the toll should be zero rated.
Okay.
We don't know what happens in the future. So when you are building any road, it's advisable to make provision for toll stations or toll plazas so that in the future, if the government decides to toll the road, it will not be difficult to do that.
So for clarity, we're expanding the toll booths on that stretch for what may happen in the future if government decides to reintroduce tolls.
Government took away tolls for obvious reasons that were stated. Congestion, nuisance, pollution. So if in future all those things are eliminated, I'm sure that any government will want to toll the public roads. But for now, the government of His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo doesn't want to toll any public road coverage.
Okay, but I guess what you're saying is that sorry, Mr. Muhammad, this is important. I mean, but physically we are putting the infrastructure there for tolling if your government or future government decides to toll. That's why you're putting that infrastructure there.
Yes, Evans.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mama.
Right. The Deputy Minister made some reasons or why they cancelled the toll, or let's say a temporary hold-up. The reasons that he gave in the field of engineering, I'm sure that is not only because we had extensive discussion with some of my colleagues in the built environment. It is not factually accurate. Now, let me give you a typical example. Toll booth locations, because of the waiting time, if we are still going by the way we are doing our digitization, vehicles will come from, let's say, two carriageway and convert at the location and then be towed. If you have congestions at the place, engineering is so dynamic. Now, my question that I asked the Deputy Minister of Finance, Dr. John Kuma, at the time we had the issue on Joy, was that, ironically, why are we having a heavy traffic from Ofankor towards Amasaman, and then about a 2 kilometer away from the Amasaman stretch, where we had the place heavily traffic, the toll booth area at Sapeman had never witnessed any traffic? It's because that toll had been properly designed.
Okay.
We are coming from a
unfortunately, because of time, if you want to wrap up for me in 30 seconds.
Because of a 2-lane carriageway, you have about a kilometer of 5 lane that spreads the traffic to get to the approach of the toll booth. And when they finish paying, they move about another kilometer before they convert onto the 2-lane. Okay, so
that comes down to engineering design. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful, Stephen Jalula, Abdullah Mohammed, Dr. Daniel Senso Jambibi. Enjoy the rest of your evening, people.